Hey everyone, this is Julie Murphy, and today I'm working on a small table runner, and I'll have all of the fabric requirements for this size runner at the end of this video. So let's get started. Okay, for this design, I'm putting a small pumpkin on my runner first as an embroidery that I'm sending over from my computer. So the first thing I'll do is touch this button down here that shows receiving from the computer. And there's the design I'm importing, so I'll touch that. And we're going to set it. And before we go any further, what we do want to do is save this little pumpkin as a stamp. And I'll show you that a little bit later. So first thing to save it as a stamp, we go into Edit. And the little green button with the flower in it allows us to make a stamp of whatever is on the screen. And then it asks, do you want the border to be right up to the pumpkin? And because we're going to use this a little bit later as an outline when we go to do some background fill, we're going to increase the distance away from the pumpkin. I think that looks pretty good. Can you see that? It kind of added some space around our pumpkin. So if we're happy with how much space we have around the pumpkin, let me zoom back out for you. This button down here allows us to save it as a stamp. And we'll say OK. And so what it does is it saves it into the Design Center under the Shapes button. And I'll show you that when we get to it. So we'll say OK. And now we are ready to stitch out this pumpkin. So let me show you what we're going to do now using our positioning sticker. Okay, you can see I've got some marks on my runner, and I have this little snowman sticker that I'm going to actually place on my runner. Once I have the snowman sticker where I want it on my fabric, now I can go back over to the machine and actually have the machine scan the placement using the sticker. So let's go back over to the screen. Back at the screen we have our embroidery button. And once we're in this screen, if I started stitching now, it would not use our snowman sticker to help with placement. So to utilize the sticker, I need to go into Edit. And there's this little button that actually has our snowman sticker, which is actually, I call it that, but it's actually a placement sticker. So let's touch that. Okay, you'll notice that we have the snowman sticker where the machine is recognizing the center is. However, as I am actually working, I want this to be my center, so that's why the marks on my fabric are a little different than the actual center. Let me show you the fabric one more time. So you'll see I actually have the center of my snowman ever so slightly off of the actual center of my fabric. So when the machine starts scanning, it just finds the little snowman and it positions the needle exactly where it detects the snowman. Now we need to remove our sticker and we are ready to embroider. Okay, the pumpkin has finished stitching, and the next thing I'm going to do is fill this triangle with a fill stitch. So let's get started. We're actually going to be using our Design Center. Now what we're going to do is scan in our fabric, and we'll be able to see the pumpkin that we just stitched out. So let's go ahead and do that. We have a choice of scan, a line scan, or illustration. Since we're not trying to use the pumpkin that we just did, we're actually going to just do a scan. This darkens our background and this lightens our background. But we can see what we need to see on the screen, but at this point what we want to do is remember the stamp we made earlier. We want to bring that in, which is going to give us a boundary point so that we can do an outline around our fabric. Remember, we saved our stamp in the Shapes button. And here is that little flower with the outline. Normally we can do any of these shapes that we want, but we want to retrieve that outline that we saved earlier. So we're going to choose the flower. And there is our little pumpkin shape. So we will set that by saying OK. And there it is on our screen. Now obviously our pumpkin is going one direction, so we can just move our shape close to where our pumpkin is. And then we're going to go down here to our rotate button. And we're going to rotate our shape 90 degrees. And we're going to drag it over top of our pumpkin. And we can use our positioning buttons down here. I just want to do some little bit of tweaking on it. Okay, now I'm happy where that is positioned. The next thing we need to do is actually place some positioning points on here so that we'll be able to fill in this section with some background fill. So the next thing we need to do is go into our line property region, and we are going to choose our notepad in our line property region. And we're going to do our little, I call it a lightning bolt. And instead of choosing a stitch, what we're going to do is say no stitch. And we'll say OK. So now what we're going to do is make sure this button right here is illuminated. It looks like the lightning bolt in the line property area. And we'll place our first boundary point. And we will do a second boundary. And I'll place my next boundary point. You'll notice we have these gray lines, and then we have this white line that's kind of flowing along here. That's just letting us know we haven't closed our shape yet. So then once we touch near where we started, we now have our boundary shape closed. So now what we can do is move on to our property regions area and choose our notepad and select one of the fill stitches. And for this, I'm going to go into the various fill stitches. And I've actually done the second upgrade, so I have the ones that are on this screen and with 3 more fills. But for this one, I think I want to actually do the leaves that were part of our first upgrade. And I'll say OK. And I think I'll choose a color that we're able to see on the screen. I'll choose the kind of purpley blue color. And I'll say OK. And what we want to do now is touch between the pumpkin and our outside boundary. And we want to make sure in our property regions, we don't want the paintbrush. We would like to have the fill. So we'll touch there, and there are our leaves. And you can see it didn't do it on top of our pumpkin because we did that stamp, and it kept it within the boundaries that we established. So we can go next. So on this screen, I actually want my leaves a little smaller than 100%. So I'll change those down to 90. And I will set it. I'm happy with the angle. And because I want to actually have this framed in, I'm going to leave the outline. You have a choice of turning the outline off or on, and I'm going to leave it on. So I'll set it, and then I will preview it and say OK. And there it is, and it shows how it's going to stitch out. And we are ready to set it. Say OK, and we're going to go over to our fabric and stitch it out. And there you go with that fill section. In the next video, I will show you how we fill in some of these other sections. And then also we'll do a little bit of applique down in the green area. So thanks for watching. I hope you'll join us for another video.